Welcome to the Valley of Outlaws podcast, a podcast for those looking to take the road less trodden, and a podcast for those seeking more. Welcome to the Valley of Outlaws podcast.
Thank you for
Tian,
having me
what
on.
an honour. You are Outlaw number 17. That is a title you can have for the rest of your life. I've enticed people. I said, go on, put it on your LinkedIn.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking, right, LinkedIn, Instagram, number 7.
Exactly.
17.
17. That will stay with you for forever. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really grateful for your time. And I always like to start with the same question. So in your own words, who are you? What do you do? And why do you do what you do?
Okay, big question.
Big question.
So I'm Tian. I am a personal trainer, Pilates instructor, and stretch coach that specializes in injury management and alignment of posture. I'm also the founder of Micro Moments. I do what I do because I just love helping people. I've always said, literally since I was 9, if I can help people, then I'm succeeding at life. So that's why I do what I do.
I love that. Why do you love helping people so much? What is it about it?
I think it's a nicer goal to have than like other forms of success, like money or fame. It's the kind of raw form of what makes or should make us happy. And being an empath as well, if I can make other people happy, it makes me happy.
And how did you first get into kind of like that kind of space in terms of like physical fitness and this kind of well-being?
Long story, I guess.
Let's
Let's go into it. So I started ballet when I was 14, just kind of out of the blue. It opened up in my village hall. Fell in love with it straight away. Went to the Royal Academy of Dance to do a degree in ballet, which had a real focus on like dance science, which is very similar to sports science. During that degree, I had a foot injury, so I had to take 6 months out because I couldn't finish my exams or dance. In that time, I, wanting to help people, wanted to help other dancers that were also injured. So studied as a Pilates instructor. Once I went back to my degree, I realized that ballet, for me, I didn't have a positive experience with it, especially the perfectionism side, the body image side. So as soon as I went back into it, it kind of gave me that realization that it wasn't for me. So I kind of focused on the Pilates, which I found much more, fulfillment. It gave me much more fulfillment. So yeah, started doing that, kind of fell into injury management again, which again, I just really love. I've always been very science-based. Wanted to help my clients more, so did a personal training qualification. And then the micro moments came from overworking, doing too much, always wanting to be a founder, so always doing something on the side, and then burning out over and over and over again, and getting to the point where I'm like, this isn't okay. I need to look after myself. And then the more people I spoke about my own burnout, more people opened up. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a massive issue that we need to all work to improve as society as well, not just our own.
Bring
our own
awareness
selves.
to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, so why is it such an important topic personally to you then? So through this journey, obviously you've gone through, your experiences and different things in life, and burnout's been clearly a key kind of like returning issue. Now, why is it so important to raise it now though as well for people, do you think?
I think especially after COVID and lockdown, we all want to do everything that we missed out on. So, and we've forgotten how to say no, and we've forgotten our own boundaries. We've got this massive FOMO because everything's exciting, everything's open again. So, and then also we all want to work harder. We all want to be successful and get up in our careers where maybe it was a little bit more stagnant during lockdown, or lockdown might have given us the edge to improve. So I think now in particular, we've got this culture around saying yes to everything and then cancelling last minute.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my God, we do.
So many people, but it didn't happen so much before COVID and lockdown. It's become something that's because we don't want to say no. Yeah. We want to do it, but then we forget about ourselves and we're like, oh, right, no, actually I do need to rest, so I've got to cancel last minute. Or I've made myself unwell from like doing too much, so I've got to cancel last minute. So we're forgetting our own boundaries. And I think it's like especially now, that's become so much more kind of prominent in day-to-day culture. So there's a lot more burnout. I think people are starting to be more aware of their own well-being as well. But at the same time, you've got this kind of catch-22 where you look after yourself and you're missing out, and you might not be doing as well with your career or like all of the other things you want to do in your life. And then you've got to look after your well-being as well. So how do you do that? How do you find that balance? And I think that's what people are struggling with.
Yeah. And so you spoke to me before about kind of 5 stages of burnout. I think at the start, let's go through what they are.
Yes.
And we can delve into it deeper. I think it'd be really interesting.
The 5 stages of burnout, originally done by a psychologist called Herbert. I am not going to pronounce that surname.
Well, we'll just call him Dr. Herbert.
Dr. Herbert in 1974.
Okay, wow.
Made these 5 stages of burnout. So the first one is the one that really, really surprised me. And this is the point where actually in November, so bearing in mind that was like 3 months ago, that's the only time I realized that I was actually burning out before I even assumed that I was burnt out. That's the honeymoon phase. So originally you're excited with the burnout. You fully kind of endorse yourself in one thing. Everything else goes out the window, which means you lose that balance. So you just keep going, you keep going. You've got that one goal in mind. And you're running on adrenaline. And then the adrenaline starts coming down and you move into onset of stress, which can happen quite quickly or it can happen quite slowly as well. Onset of stress, obviously, it's kind of surface level. You're probably still not thinking about burnout by that point. Then you've got chronic stress. Again, you might not be thinking about burnout by that point, but you don't really know how to get out of it. It's something that's just kind of ingrained in your habit by that point. Then you have burnout. And that's the point where people are like, oh, I'm probably burnt out, or, oh, I'm heading towards burnout. That's the point where you should really know you're like 4 stages into burnout, 4 out of 5 stages. And then you've got habitual burnout. And habitual burnout is the one where it's really hard to come back from it. You've got a lot of work to do. You've got this sense of hopelessness, a sense of detachment. You're not interested in your day-to-day life anymore. You've got symptoms like depression, anxiety, all of those physical symptoms as well. So physical symptoms that I didn't expect for myself. I was waking up every morning shaking.
Interesting.
And I was like, this isn't right. But at that point, I was like, I do not know a way out. I don't know how to change my life. I don't know how to, I've got all of these commitments that I have to keep on top of. Like, I can't just step away and look after myself.
It's all very like fatalistic. So if you don't do it, the world ends kind of thing. And it's interesting.
Yeah. Then you do lose that perspective of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think you even lose that in the first stage of burnout, which is the honeymoon phase.
Okay.
Like, you're completely focused on that one thing. And it can be really exciting, can't it? Like that first stage.
Yeah.
Have you been burnt out? Or
I don't think if I have, I've ever acknowledged it. I imagine it comes in different forms to people, like mentally and physically as well. I've definitely had moments where I've had to create space, but also I'm quite good at having enough space in my life. Like I have lots of things going on, but I also have a lot of time for myself.
That's
and
good.
I think sometimes that helps me kind of recover, because I think a lot of it can, obviously you could do 100 different things at the same time, but if you've got that space to just let your body and mind recover and center again, I think you can probably come back into it. But okay, you could tell me, I'm not the expert. I could be wrong there.
No, you're right. It is that balance between time spent on yourself and time spent on things that interest you. There was an interesting study basically saying that burnout comes when you don't have enthusiasm in your life. It's like a form of depression.
Interesting. I was just going to ask you, so how would you describe burnout?
Depends what stage you mean.
Okay, let's go. If you can,
let's go through the stages. So, okay, my most recent burnout, first stage, even before I was burnt out, I think I knew I'm going to head for burnout. I'm either going to burn out and succeed at everything I've kind of said yes to, or I'm going to fail miserably. I did exactly the same, literally this time last year, where I gave myself so much work. I committed to working with a few different companies, working on myself, and working for my own business. And then I basically said, either this is going to make me or break me. And essentially, like, it did break me a little bit.
Made you stronger.
It made me stronger, exactly. So the most recent burnout in November, I set my goals too high. I said yes to too many things. So already I kind of had that inkling that maybe this is going to cause burnout. But I started with enthusiasm. I was really excited about the new projects. I also knew that I was going to learn a lot on the different jobs. I took on something that was brand new to me. It was a management role, which I had never done before, or that particular management role I've never done before. So I had all of this enthusiasm. I'm also doing an MBA. I remember my interview for my MBA, and it was actually my tutor that interviewed me. She was like, "Okay, what are you doing now?" And I talked her through like the 6 different things that I'm focusing on. And she was like, "Right, why are you doing so many different things? Why aren't you focusing on one?" And it's something I've always had a problem with. Like, I see a new kind of something shiny in the corner. I'm like, right, I want that. I want to do that. So first stage of burnout was quite enjoyable, actually.
So do you think that there's like a lot of people when they start something new, they always can feel that kind of enthusiasm and kind of energy to drive them? Is it literally just a fork in the road and you can either go left or you can either go right? And so like right is like you start getting too committed, too like mentally involved, and left is like you kind of more in control. Is that what it is? Because
I think so.
Because the way you describe stage one is like it's just like a founder kind of like enjoyment, kind of feeling to it. It's I guess it's just how you get through that to the next stage where it seems like that's where the problem is.
Yeah. I think throwing yourself into something too much is probably the issue there. Okay. And it's really easy because you get so excited. But
do you get so excited that you lose your sleep and like you end up like just obsessively thinking about it every Okay.
Yeah. And I think that's the problem. Like you get excited and everything else in your life goes out the window. Whereas in actual fact, especially if you know that's the first stage of burnout, you should get excited, but be like, right, I'm going to pace myself here and I'm going to make sure I'm not neglecting any other side of my life. I'm going to eat well, sleep well. I'm going to see my friends. I'm going to see my family. I'm going to spend time looking after myself. My thing is, the way I got out for my last burnout was being creative and something that I had kind of forgotten about. But my boyfriend said, go and paint because you haven't painted for like a year. And that's what brought back like a little spark of like who I was before.
It makes it sound out like burnout, and an element of it is actually being completely lost to the connection of like your true self. Yeah. And you get to a point and you said, oh, I've done this, but why the hell have I gone this way? And why the hell am I here?
Yeah.
And you kind of lose that kind of meaning for it, I guess.
It's a disassociation with yourself.
Interesting. Really interesting. Okay, so that's stage one is that. So it's like an obsession, compulsion, 100% all in. Stage two, how would you describe that for yourself?
Stage two, starting to feel the stresses. Okay. Like the enthusiasm's still there, the motivation's still there, but you're like, whoa, this is not what I expected. This is not the outcome I expected. This is a lot harder than I expected.
So doubt seeps in.
Yeah. Okay. You realize that you need to do a lot more. Yeah. You realize that your sleep is compromised, or your eating's compromised, or you are yourself compromised, but you're still pushing because you want to see that light at the end of the tunnel. Be like, right, I just need to push through this, but that light never comes. And then, so I don't think that stage is too extreme emotionally. Yeah. The next stage, which is the chronic stress. So chronic stress, the symptoms there are you've got emotional symptoms, you've got insomnia, persistent fatigue, anxiety, and a decline in overall well-being. Okay. It still doesn't sound too extreme, right?
No, but I guess it seems like a shift in habit.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It seems like a kind of like this has become the center and everything else bends to the rules of what's in the center. And then you get all the problems come from that. Yeah. So the chronic fatigue, the stress, anxiety comes from one root rather than it just being like one of the balls.
It's like a tornado effect.
Interesting. Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really
you get sucked in.
Yeah.
I think at that point you don't see a way out.
So you just have to commit to it? Or
yeah. Okay. Well, I don't think you should. Yeah. But the overall feeling is, I just need to commit to this. I start getting really snappy.
Okay.
So
your boyfriend knows when you're in stage 3.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. He's like, you're heading for burnout again, aren't you? And I'm like, yep, I'm going to keep going. He's really good. He actually does support me really well when I'm in that stage.
Disclaimer.
Yeah. He's great. Yeah. So again, I don't think that stage of burnout sounds too extreme.
Well, it sounds like I reckon people would listen to this and go, well, that just sounds like normal life.
Yeah.
And like, that is just part of life.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Again, up to this point, I'm like, okay, this sounds like a lot of people talk to me about their jobs or their lives, and it sounds like this is just an everyday part. But there's
and you know what actually is, it's really toxic, but we've just kind of accepted it. If I say to the majority of people, how are you? What's the thing they say? Oh, I'm good. I'm busy.
Yeah.
I'm busy is like a little trophy.
Yeah.
Like if you're busy, then you're good,
Yes.
right? It's I think it's either a cry for help, I'm busy.
Yeah.
I'm not good. I don't know what to do. I'm busy.
Yeah.
Or it's a little bit of a subtle brag. And I've done it myself. And I kind of clocked it maybe a year ago that when someone said, oh, how are you? I'm like, yeah, I'm busy. It's not a feeling.
You want people to think you're busy.
Yeah. And I clocked it a year ago and I've stopped saying it. So you kind of have to come up with more interesting ways of describing how you are. But now I've clocked it, I see so many people doing it. And it is toxic. But it's something that it's just ingrained in us now. And I think that's what kind of the chronic stress point is, like, oh, I'm just busy. I think when you move into habitual burnout, sorry. When you move into burnout, that's when you've got that hopelessness, you lose your job satisfaction, you doubt the value of your work, exhaustion, complete exhaustion, physical, emotional changes. Yeah, and becoming emotionally distant as well.
I was just going to ask, is this kind of stage moving into a more of an internalized kind of like issue? So you keep it completely to yourself, like it's
I think
secluding.
If you're that exhausted, I mean, after a long day, you kind of just want to sit there on your own, don't you? Like you don't want to speak about how you're feeling or do anything. And I think that's the point you get to. You become like a robot. It's like, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to do my work, go home and just sit there. Like you're emotionless. And that's the point where, for me, I'm not so emotionless. I just cry. But it's that kind of like, I'm just so tired that I'm going to cry. It's not that I'm sad.
Okay. Yeah.
But I also know that I'm not myself. Like I lose my personality. I lose my kind of like, I guess, bubbliness. And I've completely lost my creativity by that point. It's the habitual burnout that I think they kind of overlap so much, those two. And I mean, the fact that these were made in 1974 just proves that we probably need to revise these a little bit.
Yeah.
But they still make sense today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Habitual burnout, that one needs serious support.
Yeah.
You can't come out of that yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you been in that?
Probably in a different sense, not a working sense. I've had chronic fatigue syndrome twice. Once when I was 9.
Wow.
Yeah, which is quite young for chronic fatigue syndrome. And the second one after a span of really, really poor health. And we can go into that at some point as well, because that's yeah.
Well, we can go into it now if you want to. Because I think that whole process of what was interesting, you talked about, okay, so you were injured with ballet with your foot, okay, and you thought rather than just focusing on your recovery, you thought, right, how can I help other dancers? How can I do this? How can I do that? What I'm quite interested in understanding is like, what's the mindset there? Why are you feeling you have to give out and do these things? Like, what are you trying to prove to yourself, or what are you trying to like? How are you trying to position yourself? Do you feel worthless because you can't do ballet, or what's that kind of?
So I've always said this thing, and I've always meant it in a positive way, but I think it's kind of got kind of toxic qualities to it as well. There's a silver lining to everything. If you can't see the silver lining, you've got to make the silver lining. So me having an injury, probably never being able to dance again, or being told, if you carry on dancing, you'll never dance again. I lost a massive side to me. I actually went to therapy and they said, you're basically grieving, because it was all I knew. I mean, I only started it when I was 14, but it was my entire life until I was 19.
Yeah.
So instead of kind of just feeling sorry for myself, I remember the day I had to kind of give him my notice to say, I'm I'm going to take 6 months off, I went and sat in bed and watched Pitch Perfect for the first time. And it was great. And I just sat in bed all day because I think you need that as well.
Yeah.
And I just felt sorry for myself. But then the next day I was like, right, well, how am I going to make this benefit me? Like, how am I going to find the silver lining? So I was like, I want to use my experience to help other people. And then I want to get a job. So I still had student loan, but I have more income coming in. I did a Pilates qualification. I did a nutrition qualification. And I went back to my old ballet school 3 days a week and taught ballet.
In what time frame?
Time frame?
Yeah, in terms of doing all those kind of like qualifications. Was that in like the space of a year or like 2 years? Or
That I did all of that in the 6 months.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, well, the Pilates qualification actually takes, the first stage took a year, then the second stage took another year. But I got the majority of it done in the 6 months.
Wow.
So I think my coping mechanism for anything negative in my life is throw myself into something that makes that negative situation positive.
So interesting. It's so interesting because I've done I did a year of men's coaching for like in 2023, like where someone was coaching me. And one of the big takeaways I've had from the last year was this idea of like creating space to truly understand how you're feeling internally and connecting to those kind of issues. And like I've seen in my life before that when I've not felt happy or I've brought something else in to try and like fill that void a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds a little bit like that as well.
I'm running from my own emotions.
Yeah, 100%. Which is super interesting actually, because that also can very easily then lead to kind of like the burnout phases as well. Because if you're doing it from a position of trying to like prove to yourself and running away from those fears and stuff, I think that's fascinating because it's like the trigger point, isn't it?
Yeah.
In some ways.
Yeah. Well, that's actually really interesting because that's when I guess the first time I actually did burn out, and it came through a physical, what's it called, autoimmune condition.
Wow.
So I got massive anxiety and I had no reason to be anxious. And I knew in myself, like, this isn't me. I've always been an anxious person, but I feel like I'm a swan. I'm kind of an anxious mess on the bottom.
Yes.
But then I kind of seem calm and collected on top.
Okay.
So no one's really going to know if I'm like anxious unless they're like really close to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was incredibly anxious when I was doing all of these different things. Maybe it's because I put too much pressure on myself. So I started taking a natural supplement, which basically just got rid of the anxiety, and I carried on. Before I went back to my degree, I started having symptoms of ulcerative colitis, but it's an autoimmune condition where your large intestine is ulcerated.
Oh wow!
I won't go into the details because it's a horrendous issue.
We'll let the listeners do their research.
Yeah. I mean,
as an
if you
overall
want
understanding
to.
for me.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So I took 3 months from getting the symptoms to then actually go and see the GP. Who I was luckily I had private health cover, I got referred to the best IBD specialist in the country. Yeah,
I was just gonna say, like, because I had like IBS for like a few years as well. All came apart from like anxiety and stress and like just being in different kind of environments and trying to like fit in and trying to find your place. And amazing how so many people our age have like symptoms to that.
Yeah,
in the ages between like 20 to like 30.
Yeah,
as we're trying to find our place in the world.
Exactly. And the number of people with IBS is definitely increasing, and it's definitely mental as well. You have enough serotonin in your stomach to fit a cat's brain. So you basically have the size of a cat's brain in your stomach. That's why we get gut feelings. Like our stomach is actually a second brain, and that's why it's affected so easily from like anxiety and stress. So I got these symptoms. I went to the GP 3 months after, went to see this amazing person who said, you should have seen us a lot sooner than this. Put me on medication. I was like, right, back to uni, kind of forget about how I feel. I've got a job to be done. My symptoms got worse and worse and worse over the course of like 6 months, to the point I actually couldn't dance. Like I would stand up and dance for 6 minutes before I would go sheet white and have to go and sit down or lie down in a corner. I was rushed for iron infusions. Sorry if this is graphic, but wrote the majority of my third year kind of, what's it called?
Dissertation.
Yeah, my dissertation and all of my other assignments from the toilet because I couldn't leave the toilet.
Wow.
I was an hour late to uni every day, and I didn't really explain even to my mum like what I was going through. And now I've kind of opened up a little bit more to my mum, like told her about the symptoms, and she was like, "Why didn't you say this?" It's because I didn't even acknowledge it myself. I disassociated myself with my body. So it took a year and a half and some really, really strong medication, which its one job is to attack my white blood cells to reduce my immune system in order to get it under control. During that time, the medication meant that I had glandular fever for 3 months. I was still going to uni every single day at this point. But that meant they did some kind of scans in my throat and kind of seeing what's going on. They found a lump, so they did a biopsy. Started getting better from the autoimmune condition, and then was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh my God.
So I had thyroid cancer. Again, I didn't even acknowledge it. So this was as soon as I finished my degree. I had a job in China. And when I sat there and the consultant told me I had cancer, I said, right, how quickly can we get this over and done with? Because I need to tell my new employer how long I'm going to be out. I should be moving in 2 weeks' time. And he was like, well, I guess we could like speed you through the process, but this is quite serious. And my mum's sitting next to me. I'm like, Mum, it's fine. I just need to get through it. I need to get back. I need to go to China. And then it was actually after I didn't have chemo, luckily. I had like my thyroid taken out, and then radiotherapy. And it was actually after the radiotherapy, I was lying in bed, and even the sheets touching me were too painful. Like I couldn't move a finger. It was too painful. And I just cried. And I was like, I've caused this myself, like, because I have not listened to my body. And to me, that's what burnout did to me. Like I just let myself get to a point where my body was like, stop. And then I didn't stop. And it was like, no, stop.
Yeah.
And then I had chronic fatigue syndrome for 2 years. And in that time, like I didn't have the mental energy to even read a book. So I had to sit with my thoughts for the first time ever at 22. And that's when I kind of realized like, okay, my body this is the only body I'm ever going to get. My life revolves around how my physical well-being is. I need to stop worrying about what I look like. I gained so much weight in that time. I was a size 6 and I went to a size 10 in like a matter of 2 months. And that before would have been like the most tragic thing to ever happen. And I looked at myself in the mirror. I was like, I don't care. I don't look bad. There's so many things, like my whole mindset shifted in that time. And I thought I was going to come out the other end and be like, I'm never going to burn out again. I'm always going to listen to my body. My body and my friends come first before my work does. And then I get sucked in, and it's kind of been a revolving cycle since.
How interesting, because it's almost like up to that point of 22, 23, it's been in a nice way, like an ego-led thing of like, I have to do this, almost to prove yourself. And then you get to the point where you actually sit with yourself and go, actually, this is who I am here, and I don't need these external things to prove that I am worthy or you know, to validate me in this kind of position, I guess. Yeah. But I was listening to you and I was thinking, God, I bet this is so common with so many people. Like, have to do this, have to do that, have to do, and like this kind of validation, this kind of like ticking things off the list. And I've talked to a lot of people about this, about, you know, through education. Like, we go to school, we do our GCSEs, we do our A levels. We need to go to university, take that off the list. We need to get a degree, first class or 2-1 at a university, tick that off the list. Or maybe I'll do a master's, tick that off the list. Right, I need to get a job, tick that off the list. Get a mortgage to get a house, get married, have a baby. And like, we have these lists of things we have to kind of keep achieving and achieving and achieving. And we look back and we go, well, actually, what did I do for myself? Because I've done everything for the list. Yeah,
exactly. It's everything that society asks of you.
Yeah, or what you think it asks of you.
Yeah, exactly. But there is this side of it, like, if I don't do everything on that list, am I going to be truly happy at the end of the day? Or am I going to be disappointed in myself for not doing more? There's probably the wrong way to look at it.
No, but I think you look back at it in a longer period of time and go, well, as long as I was true to myself, then I will be happy.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're not happy, it's more because you're doing it. I guess you've got to ask yourself, where's this motivation to fulfill this list coming from?
Yeah.
To really know it.
Exactly.
which is interesting. How many like people do you speak to at the moment, or who you're actually talking, like educating at the moment, are coming to you with kind of symptoms of burnout, or how many people don't even recognize they have burnout but are coming to you to ask for help?
Yeah. So it's really interesting actually. So with Micro Moments, I'm co-founding it with Seb. Both of us came together because we were both doing burnout from different points of view. And we've both spoken to so many people that a lot of them don't know they're burnt out. And then I've spoken to a lot of people, especially kind of our age, like late 20s, early 30s, saying, I went through burnout and I can see it in my younger colleagues that they are heading for burnout and they don't acknowledge it. I think it's something that we start to acknowledge maybe later in life, once we've got, I don't want to say more wisdom, but if you've been through the
have more time to think about
more time to think about it, and more time to experience it, to work out what burnout actually is.
Yes.
There's a lot of people, especially in the corporate kind of setting, who they just kind of acknowledge for the next 5 years, I'm going to be burnt out and I just need to get through it. And I'm going to be sleeping 4 hours a night. But that's how I'm going to make my money, and then it gets easier. And there are certain jobs where it's high stress at the beginning. And the higher up you get in your career, the less stress, the more responsibilities, but the less hours of work. And that's really sad. Like, our 20s are meant to be the fun years where you're making mistakes and experimenting and have fun.
Not just sit behind a computer.
Exactly. So I do feel, and this is also maybe hypocritical for me to say, because it is something that I've been through myself. We shouldn't just be focusing on, right, I'm gonna do this, kill myself in the process, but then I get to enjoy my life afterwards. Like, that's not how it should work. We should be enjoying every single process along the way.
Just to correct you, you're the perfect person to say it, because you've been through the experience. How many people do we know who claim to know stuff they've never even experienced? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
you are right.
You are the perfect person to do it, because you've recognised it for yourself and you've seen it and you experienced it. And that's, I think, where the value of what you're going to teach people is that you can talk from your own personal understanding of what you were thinking, why you were doing this, and these kind of things you were trying to seek, I guess.
Yeah. And I'm not going to lie, I am definitely not perfect. And there is a chance that I'm going to burn out again, but I've got more knowledge. I've got more ways of dealing with it. But my personality type, which is perfectionism, these are things I still need to work on. Perfectionism, overworking. I always want to achieve more. Maybe I'm greedy in the setting that I see something, I'm like, I want that. And I get carried away. That is my personality. And there are things I'm working on to improve that. But I'm not going to say I'm an angel and I'm never going to burn myself out again. And I know the special answer to all of this.
You're more consciously aware though of it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
What does perfectionism mean to you?
Perfectionism, I'm never happy with anything.
Why?
Because nothing's ever perfect. Perfection doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
And this is something that maybe I've always had it, but it definitely got worse when I was in the dance industry, because you're constantly criticizing yourself in the mirror. Like, pink ties, they are not flattering. You've got a tiny leotard on. You can see absolutely everything. And you're always trying to adjust and become closer to perfection. So there's always this drive that you're never going to achieve it. And then when you do get better, you yourself are like, well, that's not good enough now. And your teacher's like, well, that's not good enough. You've got to improve this now. And I don't think ballet is the only industry that has that process. I can't remember what the question was.
I said, what does perfectionism?
Perfectionism. Yeah. So it's always striving for something that doesn't exist. It's always striving for every mistake not to be made or to be corrected. And essentially it means never being happy with what you achieve. Like, even when I graduated with a first, I didn't get enough of a first. Like, I got like 76.
Yeah.
Like, a 70 is a first, isn't it? But I was like, well, it wasn't 80, so it's not good enough. No one's ever going to look to be like, well, what first did you get? And I'm like, well, I didn't go to the best university, so it doesn't actually count as a first, and things like this. I've always had this in my head, like never happy with my success. Like,
So do you think
you
that
can always
stemmed
do more.
from ballet though? Do you think that kind of like, was
Um,
that something at school as well?
yeah, I think it's something from school. I think also I'm not blaming my parents in the slightest, because they're amazing, but they always wanted me to do better. So I was always working to improve. But I think that's just a parent's job, right? To make you the best person possible.
Yeah.
But then like me getting a B being like, okay, you're going to try and get an A.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, a B is not good enough. And both my parents are perfectionists in certain aspects as well. So I think it's kind of ingrained in
No, fair.
everything from my childhood up.
You're the product of the environment you've raised in, so I completely understand that, and I think that I get it. I think it's super interesting. I've talked about it before with someone about parenting. Like, it's when you're raising kids, you're trying to create this perfect child, and it's like that. Again, it doesn't necessarily exist, but like letting, like how much do you actually control and actually restrict your child from experiencing just all the different spectrums of what childhood could be, rather than being in the top tier.
Yeah.
Like, it's really interesting. We won't go too deep into that.
That could be another podcast completely.
Yeah. But what I want to ask is, like, so people who come to you, what are the first kind of steps you're giving people to help them kind of get into better habits and steering away from burnout?
So my one big thing is what I see at the moment through my friends, colleagues, customers as well, is that you go from 0 to 100 straight away, right? I need to get fit, so I'm going to go to the gym for an hour every day for 6 days a week. I'm like, whoa, that's not sustainable. That's not something you've been doing in your routine at all. Start with 5 minutes, just do it at home and build those routines and those habits, and then build along that. So it's something I like to call the butterfly effect. I don't think I've made that up. Like, someone's obviously made that up before.
Give us your explanation of what it is.
Okay, so the butterfly effect. A butterfly creates a tornado or a hurricane, right? Because the tiny, tiny flap of the wing gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then causes some like massive disaster. We're not thinking about the disaster. We're thinking about something nice.
Yeah.
But starting small, like even in the mornings, thinking about 3 things you're grateful for whilst you're brushing your teeth, something really easy to do. Then you can build on that habit. You can build on that habit. You can, once it's instilled in you, it's more fun, it's more interesting, and it just gets the ball rolling. I think the hardest thing, using exercise as an example, the hardest thing is not even getting through the front door of the gym, like actually getting ready to go to the gym. That's the toughest part. And then if you're already thinking, right, I've got to put my shoes on, I've got to pick an outfit, I've got to go to the gym, I've got to work out what workout I'm going to do. I'm going to do a whole hour. I'm probably not going to enjoy it. It's exhausting. I'm going to have to shower afterwards. Like, that is not an enjoyable process.
Yeah.
You're not going to do it. But if you're like, okay, I'm going to do 5 squats when I wake up in the morning, it's something that's doable. And you're like, okay, that was doable. I'll do 10 squats. Okay, cool. I can go to the gym and do 10 minutes of a workout. And then that was fun. I'm going to do more. Something that I read in Atomic Habits, which is an amazing book.
Yeah.
Great book. Oh, do something, stop while you're still enjoying it. So let's say you go to the gym, you're going to do like an hour, or you've got an hour programmed. You do the first 20 minutes, you're like, oh, okay, I really don't want to do this. The chances are that's the point you're going to think about next time you go to the gym. If you do 5 minutes, you're like, oh, okay, that wasn't bad, and that was quite enjoyable, then it's good. And then you can go back and you do it again because you're more motivated to do it.
It's like a self-regulating your own psychology to like convince yourself it's fun.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
he also said in that book, and I heard it I think before I read that, he said about getting into these routines, it's just about showing up. So for the first 2 or 3 weeks, just go to the gym.
Yeah.
And don't do any exercise.
Yeah.
Just prove to yourself you can do that. And you're starting to prove to yourself, I could do this, I could do that, I could do this, I could do that.
Yeah.
And what kind of programs or kind of like strategies do you help with people with this? So you're giving them the idea, the kind of the concept of do small things. Is there anything else you kind of help people with a bit more structured, I guess?
At the moment, Micro Moments is brand new. So we're running kind of 7-day, they're challenges, but I'm not calling them challenges because challenges just sounds like a challenge and it's not. So kind of small 7-day programs that anyone can join, and there's a like leaderboard, so you know how well you're doing. You can kind of compete with friends and things that way. This week is the first one, and that's going to be habit building. So you pick a habit that you're already doing, and this is specifically designed for NHS shift workers, but it also relates to everyone else. NHS shift workers don't feel like they can build a routine so much because they don't have a regular routine. But we all wake up in the morning, we brush our teeth, we leave the house, we either drive or walk to work. They might walk a dog, they might have a coffee in the morning. You've got all of these things that you do every day. So use habit stacking to do something really, really basic, and then have a visual stimulus as well. So this particular program we're doing, which is going to be very kind of outdated by the point this goes out, but sign up for whatever program we'll have by then. This particular one, you get a post-it note and say the one thing you want to do is improve your mental well-being. Like maybe you have a bit of, I don't like the word cynicism, but maybe you have a bit of kind of a negative emotion throughout the day. So when you brush your teeth in the morning, you're going to say 3 things that you're grateful for. And that's a complete shift in your own physical and mental well-being. So in order to do that, you have a post-it note saying 3 things you're grateful for. And it's there on the mirror. So when you're brushing your teeth, you can't even forget because you can see it. And it's a tiny, tiny habit, but then you can build on it. So that's our first one. And then the second one is going to be 10-second to 2-minute visualizations, non-meditative form of meditation, because meditation
Can you explain what that means?
Yeah. So meditation, you think you need to sit in a dark room without a thought. But in actual fact, we use meditation throughout the day. Like even driving, if you forget how you got from A to B, you've meditated. So that's the point you want to get to. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method, 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can smell, and going down that way. It's a form of meditation, but it's so much more accessible than sitting there in a dark room for half an hour and thinking that you need to basically live a monk's life. So these are kind of non-meditation forms of meditation. Even 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, maybe that's too much. So maybe you just want to do a body scan and just be like, okay, how is my head feeling? Can I feel my hair? Do I have tension on my face? How are my shoulders feeling? Is one higher than the other? How is my torso feeling? How are my hips feeling? How are my legs feeling? You just go down and you feel the temperature in your skin and all of that. That is bringing you into your body. It's a form of meditation. But I'm calling it non-meditative form of meditation because it's not the meditation that we're used to seeing.
Yeah. I love that. I think it's also important because there's a stereotype with the word meditation, as you said, and you don't, like, people need to be aware that meditation in some ways is just like clearing thoughts from your mind and just having some focus in the moment. So that's great. I really love that. Interesting.
I'm not going to lie and say my job is, or my life is stress-free. I do have quite a high stress job. 2 days a week. I've only got that for 10 hours and then obviously business and everything. But every single time I get in my car after that, I sit there for a second, I take a deep breath in, I breathe out and let everything from that day go away, and then I drive. And that way I'm not sitting there in traffic shaking, because that's where I'm like, and then it just kind of continues and skyrockets from there.
And do you like allocate time in your life for yourself as well? Like we have so many people around us that do you just say, right, I need to have an hour, not even my boyfriend's and like I just need to focus on myself and just sitting there and creating space, I guess.
I guess I do.
The car might count with that, I guess, but
sorry?
Being in the car might count.
So my car is either my audiobook time or it's my time with no music, no sound. It's for me. And that's where I usually get most of my ideas. I've always had most of my epiphanies or my good ideas. If I sit in a steam room or sauna on my own, I get really, really hot. All of your kind of thoughts are going, and then all of a sudden it kind of like push past a boundary. And I don't recommend doing this just in case anyone's got health conditions, but it works for me. I push past a boundary, and then all of a sudden, like nothing matters. Like I've got no thoughts coming through my mind. I'm clear, and I'm the most relaxed form of myself I can possibly be. And that's where I get most of my ideas. But it's the same like if you're driving, you've got that meditative sort of process. You're going to have more room for new thoughts and new ideas to come forward.
But what do you say to people who say they don't have any time?
There will always be a time, like
Okay.
even if it's 30 seconds before you go to bed. And yes, I'm lucky. Well, not lucky. I have no commitment to anyone else. I can be fully selfish for my own time. I don't have kids that I need to look after.
Yeah.
So obviously I'm coming from a different point of view, but even so, there's going to be at least 30 seconds a day that you can just sit and have a tea or just focus on yourself for a second. And if you don't feel like you've got that, then you probably think people need you more than they actually do. Don't you think?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah?
I agree.
You have to look after yourself first. Something Oprah Winfrey said is, fill your cup before you give to others. If your cup's empty, there's nothing I can give to you there. So I'm not actually benefiting you at all. Whereas if I fill my cup, even if it's that 30 seconds, I have so much more to give. And therefore, that time is actually worthwhile to you as well as it is to me. That 30 seconds I look after myself.
That just reminded me of Will Smith. Have you read his book, Will? He's
No.
a controversial person to aspire to after Oscars. But I was reading his book during the Oscars and I was promoting it to everyone. I was saying, this book is great. And it is still really good. But he talked about this part where him and Jada, they were asked by their couples therapist to rank the order who's the most important person in their life. And she did the kids, Will, myself, friends and family. He did myself, the kids, Jada, friends and family. And she got really angry at him. She's like, how could you put yourself first? And he goes, well, if I can't be the best version of me, how can you expect me to raise our family and be like commit with you guys in my best mindset? And I completely get that. This kind of thing, filling your cup is 100% the right way to do it, because if we don't get the fulfillment and the happiness from that, we're going to come from points of resentment or disappointment, and it's going to go across, and the energy is going to pass to the other people.
Yeah.
So that.
Yeah. And it is so easy to forget yourself.
Yeah.
Especially when it feels like everyone needs you every second of the day. You've got so many commitments. You probably have unanswered emails and WhatsApps on your phone at any moment of the day. If you sit there for yourself for 30 seconds, you're probably at first going to be thinking, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do that. But the more you do it, the more they go out the window and you actually start focusing on yourself. Because a message can wait 30 seconds, surely.
Exactly. How much does like diet and eating healthy and drinking healthy and that kind of stuff come into play with this as well?
I mean, that's so important, isn't it? Like, I mean, using exercise as an example again, they say it's 80% diet and 20%, that's my maths, 20% exercise. So, and it is the fuel of your life. Like if you're not eating right, then you can't think right, and you can't, you don't have the energy throughout the day. You probably can't sleep well. So looking after your nutrition is so important. And that's one thing, like again, you've got to fill your cup in order to give to others.
Yeah.
If you're not eating well enough, you don't have the energy, and then the day feels like it's going to run away with you, run away from you.
And what kind of like diet do you have in terms of this, like breakfast and lunch and dinner? Do you kind of have a big breakfast, or like does that play an effect on how it responds to you? Or
it depends on the day.
Okay.
If I've got a long day, if I don't have a big breakfast, I get anxiety that I'm not going to eat throughout the day. Whereas on a weekend, I probably won't have breakfast because I don't actually need it. Like I had a banana this morning. I was like, that's fine because I have time for myself to eat.
Yeah.
But on the days that I don't, I will have a big breakfast. I always have a snack with me because I get hangry.
Doesn't every girl?
No, apparently not. I actually didn't realize I get hangry until like just over a year ago. And me and my friend were on holiday, and I was just a bit like sharp with her.
Yeah.
And then we sat down and we ate, and I was like, oh, I think I was actually hangry. She was like, Tian, you get hangry a lot. And I was like, okay, cool. Right. Learn something new about myself. Yeah. So now like my friends and my boyfriend, like if I'm starting to get a little bit snappy, they'll give me something to eat. Or they'll like make it a priority. Right. Let's find some food. So I always have a snack. I know if I'm not eating enough veg, I don't feel like myself. I don't feel very good. I used to be part-time vegan because I would eat meat when I go out and then not eat meat when I'm in the house. And because of my autoimmune condition, I don't absorb protein so well. So I put myself first above the animals. I'm sorry, animals. There are a lot of people that come to me, whether it's through the burnout side of things, through micro moments, or whether it's through personal training, that don't eat any veg. And they're like, I just don't have the energy to work out. I don't have the time to work out. I'm like, right, if you're having 3 eggs for breakfast, have some spinach. Like, make it easy for yourself. And a nutritionist actually said to me once, we were talking about microwaving food, and microwaves are obviously not great for your health. And she said, well, if it's the only way someone's going to eat well, let them microwave. So I will microwave some peas because I know that I'm actually going to do that rather than like put it on the hob, because that to me is so much more effort.
Yeah. I was just thinking, what do I microwave?
Do you have a microwave?
Yeah, I do. Super interesting. Okay, so what's kind of the big goals of micro moments as well? Like, where are you looking to try and get this? Is this trying to be something which you want people to like clock onto and think, right, I need to hit my targets each day of these kind of habits I'm trying to build, or what's kind of the vision of it?
The vision is Duolingo for your own well-being.
Ooh, I love that.
Something that you want to do. I mean, I don't know about, do you use Duolingo?
I used to.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. The streak is the most important thing to me.
Yeah.
I will do anything to fit in my Duolingo so I keep my streak. And it's actually so I can compete with my boyfriend, I'm on like 32 and he's on like 100. So I'm trying to catch up. But yeah, so something that is enjoyable and accessible and something that anyone can do, whether it's take 10 seconds for themselves a day or whether it's that they can take an hour for themselves a day. Like, I want something that is intuitive with what people need in that moment. Originally, it was going to be a fitness app that had 10 or 5-minute workouts and then anything up to an hour. And then if you couldn't stick to it couldn't stick to the hour, then it would bring you back down. If you could stick to the 5 minutes, it would bring you up. And then it kind of goes up and down with your day-to-day life. Like, if you've got a busy time, like, you can't do your hour, but it's going to bring you down to like 45 minutes or half an hour.
Yeah.
It's not fitness related anymore. Maybe eventually it will be.
Yeah.
But it's more habits and kind of being intuitive with yourself, breath work, breathing exercises that are really, really simple to do and accessible, non-meditation forms of meditation and visualizations.
So all things people could do in small moments of time where they're not gonna, it's not gonna really detrimentally affect their day as well, which is great.
It's a micro moment.
Love that. Okay, now I'm gonna get some more personal questions.
Go.
Like, are you a short-term or long-term thinker?
Both. I'm either really short-term, like 2 weeks, or really long-term, like 5 years.
And how does that affect you with each kind of like mindset?
Short-term, I get really stressed because I look at my calendar. I'm like, I have no time to do anything I want to do. I try to fit everything in like a week or 2 weeks. And then long term, I get really excited. I'm like, everything is actually going the direction I want it to. And if I reach my 5-year goal, that sounds really bad. If I reach my 5-year goal, I'm going to be really happy. But I shouldn't really. I want to be happy in the process and the journey.
Tony Robbins said a really great quote, which was, most people overestimate what you can do in a year and underestimate what you can do in a decade.
Yeah.
And it's so true. And it's like, when you focus on these short things, you can get really stressed, like, oh, I'm not going to be able to achieve this. But if you just let it be over time, it will fall into place in that way, I guess.
I have this thing every single birthday where I like get like minor depression for like a week before, being like, I've done nothing with my life. And then I'm just looking back past the past like 6 months. And then I'm like, actually, if I actually look at the year, okay, I actually did improve quite a lot. But if I look in the last 5 years, Jesus, I've come far. But I'm not doing that. I'm looking at what I've achieved that year, right?
And it's just a mindset of like, it's a comparison mindset as well, isn't it? Like, you look at what's everyone else doing, how am I doing that? And it can really lead you into kind of quite bad places if you let it. Where do you find fulfillment in your life now?
Through helping others. Human connection is massive, but then also alone time. It's balancing that introverted time with that extroverted time. And creativity. Creativity is massive for my mental and physical well-being in every aspect of my life. I've always been creative, and I if I kind of neglect that, I'm not myself.
What does creative mean to you?
Even creating micro moments, using my imagination. My artwork is something that I definitely still don't do enough of, but I enjoy it. I would say even my makeup in the morning, like that is a moment that's purely for me. And I can go into quite a meditative state just doing my makeup and like using it as a form of creativity and artwork.
I love that. Yeah, I really like that. And
That's a micro moment in itself.
That is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's connecting to your intuition as well of what feels right for you and being happy with yourself and
Yeah.
those kind of things, which is really, really, really important.
Yeah, and also seeing how I feel. Like if I look in the mirror one day and I'm like, oh, I look puffy and tired, then it's me acknowledging how I feel internally more than I think externally, because you can look great but feel bloated and feel kind of horrible about yourself, whereas you can not have such a great day physically but you've got more energy and therefore your confidence is higher. So I think it's so much less about aesthetics and so much more about how you're actually feeling in your body.
And how much of that is determined by how present you are as well?
Yes.
It is.
Absolutely. Like if you're stressed, doesn't matter how much sleep you had, you're gonna feel pretty shit about yourself. Am I allowed to swear on here? Okay, cool. You feel pretty rubbish about yourself. If you're in a really good place mentally, you're gonna feel great about yourself. So it's so in tune with your mental well-being as well as your physical well-being. And then aesthetics are just kind of like the plaster on top, aren't they?
Yeah. And what does kind of that kind of like living in the moment and this connection with people actually mean to you as a person? Like, what do you get from those? Right.
I am the most ungrounded person. Like, I'm a Sagittarius, I'm a fire sign.
Okay. I'm going to pretend I know what that means.
What star sign are you? Do you know?
Virgo.
Oh, I know nothing about Virgos, I'm sorry.
Thank God.
Yeah, so it basically just means I'm quite fiery. I mean, being ginger as well, quite fiery. I have a go mentality. When I have to sit and stop, I'm kind of internally, I'm still like vibrating. So kind of being intuitive with my own well-being and trying to stop and try and be grounded is just something that I've always struggled with. But like even the breathing techniques, just really simple breathing techniques, or ice, cold immersion, cryotherapy I love as well. Massages are the best, but how often do I get a massage? Not enough. Yeah, so I'm not a grounded person, and I do struggle to like feel internally. What was the question? Was it something about groundedness?
It was what was like living in the moment means to you,
Oh,
and
right,
connections as well.
So living in the moment is being grounded and being able to fully immerse yourself in everything that's going on in like around you. If you're anxious or if you're not grounded, you can't fully kind of immerse yourself. Like when you're stressed, you probably feel like life is happening to you. Like you'll be in like social situations and it kind of feels a bit like a blur. And I think that is when you're not grounded, when you're struggling to kind of live in the moment.
I get that. I feel that as well. It's ever since I've started doing meditations and ice baths and that kind of thing as well, you realise that everything around you isn't as important as you thought it was.
You're right.
Life's more playful and fun than we realise.
Yeah, I think that's what COVID did as well. Like it kind of burst your bubble a little bit. Like you get so wrapped up in like, this is my life and this is so, so important. And then all of a sudden, like everything stopped. You're like, oh, actually, it doesn't matter so much.
No,
and it gives you that moment to be like, okay, I've just been running with like what is expected of me. Now I can stop. What do I actually want to do? Like, is this path the right path for me? And I think that's where so many people changed their careers over lockdown.
Were you raised to think outside the box by your parents, or were they kind of like, you need to get a career and this and that? Or?
So both my parents are scientists. I wanted to be a scientist when I was really young. And then I wanted to be an engineer because there aren't enough girls in engineering. And then I wanted to be a CEO because there aren't enough girls that are CEOs.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to be a ballet teacher. So my parents have always kind of let me be creative and do what I want. And like they sent me to so many hobbies when I was growing up, to like so I had the choice of what I wanted to do,
Yeah.
and just get life experience as well as like schooling experience. But both my parents always instilled in me like hard work pays off. Both of them basically came from nothing. My mum left school with no qualifications at all, and she spent 7 years doing 2 degrees and a master's, and I got a completely different quality of life. Not quality of life, that's wrong. Completely different style of life to what they did, because they worked hard to provide that for me. And they've always instilled that, like, this is what we've done to support you. Now you're going to work hard in order to like improve our kind of family name, I guess, and make it even more spectacular. So maybe that's why I feel so much pressure to do well.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
The kind of, well, it's also the pressures you put on yourself, which you think is what your parents want from you as well.
Yeah.
Like it leads your drive and that kind of essence. It's really interesting.
They just want me to be happy at the end of the day. I know that.
There you go.
And to be honest, they don't know anything about business. So when I'm doing all of these, like either my freelance work or setting up a company, and like even doing my MBA, they're like, that's cool. They want to give advice and they want to support me, but they're like, we don't know how. This is completely different to being in the same company for 35 years, is what they did. So yeah.
Scary for them probably.
Just the unknown. But I think they have faith in that I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Nice. Oof, you kind of touched this actually, but what are the kind of key drivers for success for yourself?
The hard thing is, success is so related to money, isn't it? But don't you think? Like,
it is, yeah. No, I agree.
And we see successful people, and what makes them look successful is the aesthetic that is kind of derived from money. But if you're thinking about that your entire life, you're just going to be miserable. Like, I never have enough. So I've always tried to focus more on how many people am I affecting? How many people, what quality of life am I able to provide people? Like, what kind of education can I help people with? Like, how much of a difference can I make to society's life? Like, I don't think I'm going to change the world, but I will do my part in order to change the world as much as possible, and there'll be other people that are also doing it. So we're all going to change the world eventually together. That's my that's my idea of success.
I like that. Everyone has their own little bit to kind of take control of and responsibility for.
Yeah. Are you going to make the world a better place or a worse place?
Probably worse.
No.
I'm joking. Okay, final 2 questions. What are the keys to like succeeding and following your dreams?
Being passionate enough, and when passion goes, being disciplined enough, and knowing where you want to go.
Interesting.
And why.
Why?
If you know why, when times get tough, you've got that one thing that's driving you. Okay, right now is a really tough time, and not talking about burnout. Burnout you don't do. You try to avoid.
Yeah.
But if you've got that one goal and you're like, right, I've got to work really, really hard, or this isn't going to plan, you're like, but I'm going to keep going because of that one why. And my one why is I want to make a difference to people's lives, positive impact on people's lives. And I think that's enough of a driver to get you to where you want, if your why is strong enough.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think it's so important. Understanding where and why you're going is just the essentials.
Yeah. Although there are people, like, I mean, I'm going back to star signs here, but Pisces in particular, they're like these floaty fish. And I know 2 Pisces in my life, and both of them are like, yeah, I'm just enjoying what I'm doing right now. And it kind of just like, the river flows them into some sort of major success. You're like, there's me like fighting my way this way. And you're just kind of like on the river like this. Like, this is fun. So I don't think you have to work hard and have a specific goal and plan to get to that goal in order to achieve. You can just be like, this is fun, and I'm keen to see where this river takes me.
Yeah.
So
it sounds like knowing a star sign is a great place to start as well.
Well, you probably are your star sign anyway. I mean, yeah, if you believe in that.
Okay, final question. And you haven't got kids yet, but I always ask the question of what was one lesson you would like to teach your children when you had them?
Oh, that's a really tough question. I think confidence and knowing your self-worth goes a long way. Like, that's the one thing that's going to firstly drive you. You think of something, you're going to do it. It's also the thing that's going to make you happy in yourself. And it's the one thing that's going to help you say no to things that aren't, on your path, that don't take you further along your path. If you know who you are, like if someone's like, oh, do you want to do this? You're not going to be like, you're okay.
Yeah.
You can be like, no, sorry, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, I love that. Tian, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your time and coming on here. And I think talking about your journey and experience with burnout and the kind of the 5 symptoms, hopefully people have an understanding and a little bit of kind of recognition towards the topic, and they might look at it and think, oh my God, I'm in stage 4. I'm stage.
Yeah, that's what I did. I was like, I'm stage 5. All right, let's sort this out.
But where can people contact you? How can they get in touch? How can they come and join your classes? How can they sign up to Micro Moments?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Tian Howell, just my name, on Instagram. I post everything there, whether it's my fitness, Micro Moments, other things I'm doing, events, or you can follow Micro Moments at micro.moments.uk. Just go on Micro Moments or Tian Howell and the website link will be there. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Cool.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Valley of Outlaws podcast. Please follow us across Spotify and YouTube and see all our latest news across our socials.